2030.
A very warm welcome today on the main stage. We have a guest, Iyad Aldalooj, the CEO and co-founder of Penny Software, an enterprise software company that provides procurement management technology and is considered a leader in cloud-based source-to-pay solutions. Iyad was a general manager at Careem in Saudi Arabia when it was acquired for $3 billion and sits on the boards of SACO and is a member of the Misk 2030 leaders. Welcome, Iyad.
Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here. And I would love to start with you just telling us a little bit about your own story. You've had an amazing journey so far. So please tell us about yourself, where you're from, and your journey.
Absolutely. So there's I'll give you the resume-like version, and then I'll drop something that is super interesting at the end. And we'll just stop there because that will require another podcast. So I'm a Saudi entrepreneur, born and raised, of course, here. And I went to college in the US. Out of all places, I chose Omaha, Nebraska, perhaps for my love to Charlie Munger and then Warren Buffett. And I lived in Omaha for quite some time. I did my undergrad in engineering, did my master's there. And then I co-founded an e-commerce technology company when I was in the US. And that was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. I think it was back in like 2010, when I first discovered the love of Silicon Valley. And I was extremely fascinated about all the things that were going on in Silicon Valley. I would travel to Silicon Valley and I, had this dream I was fascinated by the innovation and the level of ambitions that were there. Did not end up going to Silicon Valley. So Omaha was my Silicon Valley, and I started an e-commerce technology company there, ran it for about 7 years. We tried to raise external capital, failed to raise external capital. So it was an unbelievable journey. At that time, Careem approached me, and I was very excited about the vision of Careem. And I moved back to Saudi to join Careem as a general manager. Then I became the marketing director of Careem as well. Now, I can talk about Careem all day because that's an unbelievable journey. But after Careem was acquired by Uber, this is when I wanted to do something different. And we started Penny Software. And that was the beginning. We launched Penny Software. We started in 2020. The official launch was in 2021. So we are 3.5 years old company. And that's the resume version. But the thing that I wanted to drop just to keep it interesting is you asked me about my life and where I come from. Perhaps the most interesting part about my life is that I think my childhood, and the most interesting part is that I grew up in a 500 years old castle. Yeah. And we can,
Where is this castle? Tell us about it.
So this castle in a city in Sharqiya, which is the eastern part of Saudi Arabia, Careem, and it has a lot of historical buildings and historical castles. So the house I grew up in was built during the Ottoman Empire, and it was a 500 years old castle. It's an incredible story. I actually am in the process of writing a book about it, and I published the first few pages. So if you look up snippets of my odd life, the castle and potato chips. That's the title. You will find that story.
Fantastic. I look forward to visiting it. I actually think, is it now protected and kind of registered with the Ministry of Culture?
That is correct. We are actually in touch with the Ministry of Culture for that.
I think I visited this castle the last time I was in Sharqiya. If I went on a tour in Qatif, would somebody have taken me there?
You won't believe how many people I need. First, you told me that, is that your house?
Yeah.
Oh, I have a picture of your house.
I'll show you the photos later.
We'll include them in the video. I'm used to it.
That's
fantastic.
When
we were kids, one of the weekend activities, that was like back in the early 90s. One of the weekend activities in the morning is to wait for that Aramco bus that's full of Americans that would just like come and just take a tour in our house, and just like we're kids, and it's fascinating that I had this in my childhood. I'm thankful for it.
Yes, it is amazing. And I can say to whoever has not been, it is worth a visit. It is gorgeous. And I learned and actually, there were so many things that I loved about kind of just the way the layout of the house was. And just the tour guide was wonderful. And he was incredibly, just added so much. He was very informed and added a lot of kind of value to the tour because he was knowledgeable about kind of how the different rooms were used and the history of it. And
Right,
this is amazing that you grew up there. Okay, but we're going off on a
right.
tangent, and that's not what we're talking about today. However, people should definitely check it out, and I'd love to read the Potato Chips and Castle. But in the meantime, please tell us a little bit about Penny Software. As you mentioned, it's 3 years old, but you've said in the past that the goal is to consumerize the enterprise experience. And the enterprise
Right.
systems don't have to be boring. So as far as I understood, you have 1 billion riyals going through the company. What is that, annually, or even like
So that's that's the gross transaction value, which basically, let me give a brief introduction
please?
about what is Penny Software. So, and simply, it is a SaaS platform for procurement management. So think about Penny as like a verticalized enterprise software, ERP software, but only for procurement. So we always say that we are the software that your procurement team uses at the company. And we typically serve mid-market, upper market, mid-sized companies, large size, semi-government, government. So all organizations that tend to have complex procurement need procurement software for governance, compliance, and overall automation. And what we serve those companies, and they add their suppliers to the platform. So it kind of creates this network effect of buyers and suppliers. Now, our clients are the buyers, but they add the suppliers to the platform, and it's a multi-tenant kind of platform where you have buyers on one side, suppliers on one side, and they're doing business and transactions with each other. So this year we're tracking 1 billion riyal, but that's just the beginning. We forecast that next year we will be more than 10 billion riyal, and those are the GTVs.
That is an amazing story. So tell us a little bit about the impetus behind establishing Penny Software. I mean, what were the existing challenges in the procurement industry that you identified and that led to the spark?
Well, whenever I'm asked this question, I wish the answer would be that I spent 10, 15 years in procurement and I've identified this challenge because I'm familiar with it and I come from the industry. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. So I'm totally an intruder on the procurement space. I do not come from procurement background, but our co-founder, Majid, comes from procurement background. So he is the expert in procurement. But to tell you why we started Penny, I cannot not go to the purpose of Penny. So I joined Careem. Careem was an early stage startup in Saudi, and I have witnessed the growth of Careem to become a multi-billion-dollar company. The impact it did. I think anyone who's observing the ecosystem would testify that the impact of Careem was a multiplier impact. It wasn't just the 3 billion, it was the multiplier impact in the whole ecosystem. And that was really, really amazing. The next thing after leaving Careem for me was what purpose can I really, really stick to for the long term? And the long term, I'm not talking about the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. I'm talking about the next 20, 30, 40 years of my life. What is that one mission that I can stick to? And the one mission that resonated with me and our co-founders is this region is amazing and full of tradition. And we see what's happening in Saudi Arabia. We see what's happening with Vision 2030. We see the boom in innovation and the startup ecosystem. But what we haven't seen yet, and we're confident it is happening, is building world-class software brand from this region to the world. And this is something that we're confident that's inevitably happening. And this is I think this is a byproduct, whether we intended or not, byproduct of Vision 2030. And we wanted to be part of that. We want to be part of building a world-class brand from this region to the world software brand. And guess what? This became the actual statement of the company. So at Penny, we probably say this every day, building a world-class software brand from the region to the world. Now, we took that and we reverse engineer it to how can we do this? Now, in order for us to build this, we cannot do something similar to Careem because Careem is heavily operationally driven and we can't scale with operationally driven startups. So SaaS is the right way, is the right platform to do. So we settled on building SaaS. Now, I know this is a very long answer to your question, but I'm sort of like cascading down on how we arrived at procurement. And we realized that in terms of SaaS, if we build a B2B SaaS, what should it do? And we looked at the main verticals of any organization, and we discovered that procurement in particular is behind in digitization. So if you think of the main verticals of every organization, HR is ahead in digitization, finance, accounting, sales, the CRM industry is a $500 billion industry. You could, all of these, but when it comes to procurement, we identified procurement and legal. I cannot stand legal, so we settled on procurement. And that's the answer.
That is fascinating. And actually, I think that's one of the things that really makes your company stand out. You're very young, but at the same time, you are a success story in the tech field for so many reasons. But the key one is that you are, a global company already. How were you able to penetrate the global market and be competitive in this space?
So first of all, the vision at the beginning is that we're going to be focusing here in Saudi and build advantages here, and then we grow. But the problem we're solving is a global problem. The tool we're building can serve you whether you're in Riyadh, Tokyo, or London. Doesn't matter. What we found ourselves from day one in Saudi here in Riyadh, when we are competing with, when we are trying to acquire a customer, from day one, we're competing with Oracle, we're competing with SAP, Microsoft. So from day one, we're competing with the global players, whether in Riyadh or London, it doesn't matter. So that was unbelievably challenging. You could look at it as discouraging, but you could also look at it as highly encouraging. And we wanted, and that sort of pushed us to raise the bar. So we were competing with the global players from day one. It's not even a choice for us. Now, in terms of global users, we still don't have an outbound machine at Penny, and this is something that is coming up, but we don't have it yet. So all of our clients, especially outside of Saudi, came in organically. So to give you an example, we have one of our clients, a multinational, multi-billion euro company based in Paris, France, and they came in organically. We have a client, very large organization in Nairobi, Kenya. They also came in organically. We have from Pakistan, from other places. In terms of users, the users are mostly the suppliers that are added to the platform. And therefore, we have users from more than 50 countries. Overall, over 8,000 organizations or business users are using Penny.
So I have a question. When you say that you've been competing with Oracle, let's say from day one, what is it that you're adding? And why would they come to you in order to get into, to be, listed as users and as suppliers versus going to Oracle or adopting that?
So to clarify, when we compete with Oracle or SAP, we're not competing with the ERPs because the ERPs in those both platforms are not are not covering or properly covering the procurement aspect of it. So those two products, for example, have a procurement model. SAP, they have a completely different procurement model. It's called Ariba. Oracle, they have their own. So we compete not with the ERPs, we compete with their procurement. Now, the advantage we have over them is immense. For starters, they're very heavy legacy systems. And we've seen multiple examples where clients went with them and the digital transformation in their organization failed. The reason why it failed because of resistance from the end users, very heavy, very clunky kind of software. So we believe that the market more and more is moving toward faster, lighter, more agile, delightful user experience rather than your good old legacy systems.
No, and that makes perfect sense. Like I think of them as maybe the dinosaurs of the industry, and then you're coming in as this agile, child, really coming in and growing and kind of rolling with the needs of the industry. And I think that's something that you've mentioned before. You've said that the procurement landscape is undergoing a seismic shift. And hyper automation is driving this. So, what do you mean by hyper automation, and how is that changing the procurement industry?
Absolutely. So in the past, we were looking at digitization to start with that. We need to do this on a digital platform. And the reason why we need to do this on a digital platform is we need to have data. We need to have traceability. We need to have visibility. But a lot of those, in the past, a lot of the activities that businesses were doing on a digital platform, we're actually doing manually. So I have to go submit an RFQ. When I receive quotation, I have to go compare it, analyze all of this. Now we're going to hyper automation where it's not only digitization, but it's going to automation. And with automation, here comes the AI application and procurement, which in Penny, we are applying this application. Now, with AI, you don't have to do all of this. Digitization is there, of course. Automation is there, but also the AI is doing a lot of work for you. It's no longer I receive the quotation and compare it and analyze. The system will do that for you. It will just give you the report. And based on the report, the system will even suggest and say, Dr. Hanaa, this is based on the data that we have, we lean toward X or Y. So this hyper automation that we see happening in procurement or other fields is inevitable with AI.
But then that means that you're going to need a different talent base, right? Because isn't this the whole thread of AI anyway, that, it's changing the way we work, and therefore we're going to need to hire people that really know how to use the tech, that are maybe specialized in that instead of being specialized in procurement. So how are you navigating through this challenge?
So I'm not with the camp that is, let's say, the pessimist camp that believe that AI will be threatening jobs. There will be some jobs that will be lost by AI, but then there will be a lot of jobs that will be added by AI. Now, when it comes to the procurement as an application, AI will augment the work of humans. So if I'm working with an amazing talent who's a procurement expert, I want her to be focused on her expertise rather than doing manual work, rather than collecting a lot of proposals and comparing them and analyzing them. I want her to be on the analytical part, right? Not on the manual work. And so I believe it will augment human and empower them. But of course, we cannot be completely oblivious of the fact that AI will eliminate redundancies.
But how are you finding those people that are working with you? How are you finding developing talent?
So when it comes to developing talent, I believe this is one of the main challenges for any tech organization, whether in Saudi or not. Some people say that, this is the challenge in Saudi. Believe me, I was in Silicon Valley and I spent time there. It's exactly the same challenge there. Talent is a challenge everywhere. We are attracting talent from all over the world. We have amazing Saudi talents. We have talents from all over the world. Our team is incredibly diverse. We have people from India, from the US, from the UK, from Egypt, you name it, like Turkey, you name it. So we have a very, very, very diverse team, and I fundamentally believe that if you are working on an exciting project, and you have an exciting vision and a purpose, a lot of talents want to be part of that. A lot of talents want to be part of that.
No, that's true. And I think that, like you said, and you mentioned it already, Vision 2030 is working really hard to create this ecosystem where people want to be a part of it as well. And so you're just, you're driving this forward in such an incredible way because you've created something that people want to be a part of. So you and Lucien were speaking at the same Munshaat conference, the CEO conference, just a couple days ago in Riyadh. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about the status of entrepreneurship in Saudi. I mean, you're, again, clearly one of the success stories. You have a unique view on this coming from Careem as well. So is the ecosystem really developing quickly?
I think I was lucky to be part of that success story through Careem. And I can tell you that back in the days in Careem, first of all, we really, really struggled. So, and by the way, I'm like really at an advantageous position because of Careem. And I'll tell you why. Back in Careem, when I moved back from the US, we were obviously trying to attract talents, and very few people wanted to join a startup. If you go back in 2017, for example, very amazing talents. You're from Sharjah, I'm from Sharjah, and you know how Aramco is, right? Every talent in Sharjah wanted to work in Aramco.
Absolutely. Still do to some degree, right?
Of course, which is good, is good. But give us some, give us some of that talent. And I remember we had this like very, very little humble office in Khobar, and we want to attract amazing talents, and they come in and they already have an offer from Aramco, from McKinsey, they heard about Careem, and they come to this, and the moment they see the office, like the building is kind of sketchy, they feel like, I'm not sure I want to be here, right? So we really, really struggled. Today, I can tell you at Tini, we do not have that struggle. We have a good product. We have an amazing, exciting mission, and we did at Careem as well. But in Careem, we struggled back in the days because the ecosystem wasn't there yet. Now we see people who are leaving the Googles of the world and want to move. By the way, we have a lot of talents that are moving back. Saudis that probably worked in Silicon Valley or other places and want to move back, which is not surprising. But what we see happening is a lot of Arabs as well who are there in the US for quite some time. And now they hear about Vision 2030. They hear about all the exciting things that are happening, and they want to move to Riyadh, which is really exciting. So the ecosystem is growing amazingly well, and that in itself testifies the momentum that is happening in the ecosystem.
No, absolutely. It is definitely testament to it. I mean, I can just tell you, I had a startup way back in the day, and it was in food and beverage, and it was impossible to hire Saudis that were not. And then we ended up working with KFUPM and making an arrangement to hire part-time students because that wasn't built into the labor law. That was helpful. Most of them were not from Sharjah, so they didn't have those family obligations. So it made it a little, but it was a very, very difficult challenge, and it was during the time when you were like struggling to get visas. So it's a different landscape today. And I can tell you, just this summer, I was in the US, and like I have friends that have just moved to Saudi that, like you said, Arabs that have lived abroad their entire lives and are super excited to come and see what the vision is about. And so I do think we're in a really lucky transition point, and people who are brave enough to come and test it out, and are lucky enough to find entities like Penny, for instance, are definitely going to be, I would say, pleasantly rewarded by the opportunities that are there. But I would like to say, what are some things that you could share with other entrepreneurs, regional or even in the kingdom, that are listening and watching and thinking, I would love to grow. I would love to be where you are 3 years into my startup. What can you kind of offer in terms of recommendations?
Where can I start? Now, to start with that, let us establish the fact that everybody wanted to be financially successful. Like anyone who tells you that I don't want to be financially successful is not being truthful, right? So being financially successful is an important goal. No one disagrees with this. However, And I know that this is like a broken record. Every entrepreneur says this, but it couldn't be farther from the truth. If the goal is only financial, you will very likely, if you're a hardworking person in an amazing opportunistic market like Saudi Arabia, you will be fine, but you will not really go very far. And my advice is, if you are going to put yourself in this mission, it's an unbelievable roller coaster. If you're getting on this roller coaster anyway, go to the right direction. Think big. Have a purpose that's bigger than you. And well, I truly believe that nothing, and I'm trying to translate the thought in English because it came to my head in Arabic, but nothing more honorable than doing something for your country. Nothing is more honorable than this. And what better thing you can do for your country than creating opportunities, promoting innovation, advancing technology, advancing science, whatever your field is, advancing that field is the best thing we can do. This is the best thing we can do. And I believe that Vision 2030 gave us the framework to put it, right? Gave us the platform, but also the framework.
No, absolutely. And I think that that is key. You are contributing to the economic growth. Therefore, you're contributing to each and every Saudi's opportunity to find a job, grow, open their own household and contribute to their livelihoods. And whether it's directly through you or indirectly, it's absolutely, I think that part of the mission, and it's the passion is very clear. But you've also mentioned, and this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs also complain about, that you did have trouble fundraising for an earlier startup. So where are you now with fundraising for Penny? And did you learn from those previous experiences that weren't as successful?
We learned a lot, learned so much. So in Penny, we don't have any problem fundraising. In fact, we have an opposite problem right now. But in my previous startup, when I was in the US, we really struggled to fundraise and we learned our lesson. The main reason why we failed in fundraising in my US startup is that, number one, we didn't fully own our own technology. So it's very, very important if you're building a technology company, own the technology. Make sure that you own your core value. Number two, we were not building something that is quite disruptive. And it's so funny because what we were trying to do and we were making a lot of money. It baffled me. Like, how come we are not able? Like, what's wrong with those VCs? Why? Like, we're making money and they're not even seeing it. That company was making money, but still, it wasn't disruptive. It wasn't creating any breakthrough in a certain domain. And that's why it failed to raise external fundraising. And here's the funny part. At Penny, we are trying to do something very disruptive. We're trying to completely disrupt this multi-billion-dollar industry that's procurement. We're building deep tech. We're competing with Microsoft. We're competing with Oracle. Wallahi, Dr. Hanaa, it's much easier now than before. And the reason why I couldn't have put it better than Sam Altman, when he was leading Y Combinator, he said something that truly resonated with my experience. It's easier to build hard companies than easy companies. And it's harder to build easy companies than hard companies. And it is so true. So my advice is, if you're building a company that should be VC backed and you want to raise funds, do something that is innovative, different, has a higher purpose, an exciting vision. Not only that will attract investors, but also attract talents to join them. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's really powerful. I do think that for a very long time in Saudi, you would see a lot of people who are really enterprising. They want to be their own boss. They want to start their own company. But are they filling a market gap? Are they actually filling a gap that can be exported and global in reach? A lot of times, no. And so I love that your example really is showing how to do that. And I think, again, you said that you were this is the last question I'm going to ask you about fundraising, but you said that you were, not struggling, quite the opposite. Has a lot of that support been from existing programs within the kingdom? Has that been support from VCs? Like, can you tell us a little bit about how the fundraising has gone?
100%. 100%. You know why? Because all the VC, not all, but I would say majority of the VCs in Saudi today are supported by government program. Government program like the CEC, JADA, whatever, it ultimately goes back to initiatives by the government, which is amazing. By the way, that was the history of Silicon Valley. If we go back to the semiconductor day, it was exactly the history of Silicon Valley. It wasn't quite organic and quite capitalistic. So we cannot be oblivious of that. And I'm quite grateful. And I think that's the right thing to do for the economy.
I want to wrap it up by asking you probably a predictable question, but really, what is next for Penny Software? Are you expanding into other markets, industries? Can you just give us a glimpse into what you're building?
So when back in 2020, when we were putting together Penny, our vision was to build a $50 billion company by 2040. How do we do this? Dr. Hanaa, we have no idea. We still have no idea. But we have that vision is that going to be a $50 billion company by 2040. We don't know how, but here's what we know. We know how we are getting Penny to be a $1 billion company by 2030. We know how, and we're working on that. Once we get there, we will figure out how to take that 1 billion to 50 billion by 2040. So what's next is we're laser focused on Penny. Penny is not the kind of company that will, and I tell investors this all the time, we're not going to be $1 billion company next year or 2 years. If that's your dream, that's not the right place for you. Penny is going to be $1 billion company by 2030. And inshallah, a $50 billion plus by 2040.
Iyad Aldalooj, founder of Penny Software. Just what an incredible journey. I am fascinated by your story. I think everybody on the show will be, and we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for coming on the 2030.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.